we've got more bad news for President Biden to report. In a Fox News poll out yesterday, Biden's ratings continue to plummet. Now, this is looking specifically at the economy, taking a sharp decline. Only 39% of voters approve of his performance around the economy. That is an 11-point decline just from September. His overall job performance, not much better. Fox News finding only 46% of voters approve after the botched withdrawal in Afghanistan, the wide-open border. That number is even lower for Congress, though. Nearly 6 out of every 10 voters disapprove of Democrats and Republicans in Congress. Joining me right now is former senior advisor to the Clintons, Mark Penn. He is also the CEO of NBC Partners and Stagwell Group president and managing partner. Mark, it's great to see you. Thanks very much for being here. I think the last time we spoke, we also talked about these plummeting ratings for President Biden. Your reaction?
Well, it seems like the president seems to be pouring gasoline on his own fire here, because the ratings keep going down. There's been really no progress by the administration in any of the major issues. And the most important thing in the Fox poll is the economy, which is the #2 issue after the virus. Really, the president has taken a huge slide here, and 9 out of 10 are concerned about inflation, and particularly, gas prices. These are and food prices, the kinds of things that really serve as a tax on everyone when they go up. So these are serious problems in these numbers, and there seems to be no abatement in the decline.
Well, part of it is all of the lying that we keep hearing about. I mean, President Biden giving out mistruths on everything from the wide open border to using an ID to vote being a Jim Crow situation to economic issues as well. I mean, he traveled to Pennsylvania yesterday to try to sell this massive spending plan. $5 trillion, and they're trying to get it to $2 trillion, and he continued to make these puzzling claims. Listen to this.
The cost of the Build Back Better bill in terms of adding to the deficit is zero, because we're going to pay for it all. In addition to that, half of it is a tax cut. It's not spending money, it's a tax cut for working class people. When you talk about the number, we shouldn't even talk about the numbers, because it's all paid for, written in the same piece of legislation.
So let's be clear. Half of this plan is not a tax cut at all. In fact, taxes are going higher. They're going to overturn the Trump tax cuts. Kristen Sinema is now pushing back, saying that she's opposing raising taxes on corporations. And because she is pushing back, apparently she's stymieing the Democrats' tax increase plans on corporations, high-income earners. They've got to get her on board. They've got to get Joe Manchin on board. They've got to get Mark Warner on board. Your thoughts?
Well, look, I think the Democrats here may eventually get everyone on board. I think now they're talking about $2 trillion. Manchin's at $1.75 trillion. The voters, frankly, in polls are closer to $1 trillion. I don't think comments like President Biden makes that it's not going to cost anything, that it's all a tax cut, are particularly productive to his viewpoint. I think that they never held the kind of hearings or said, let's like child care and pass a child care bill that might have gotten public approval. I think the public sees this as enormous taxing and spending. And I think this bill adds, as I said, more gasoline to the fire that we see going on here on the issues of immigration, crime, inflation, economy, deficit, and foreign policy. This is why these ratings are well underwater. And President Biden's favorable ratings, it used to be his chief asset. That, well, I really like him. I may not agree with everything he says. Those actually have fallen below 50% in most polls that I see as well, and particularly in swing districts. And that's a problem. He's lost that personal likability edge. And instead, he doesn't really answer many questions. And the administration puts out statements that are never questioned, so they don't get the human interaction with him that I think is very important to a presidential image.
Yeah, and the lies are just beyond, about vaccine mandates is another one. I'm not going to have a mandate. Well, we got mandates. Here's Cornerstone Macro and Andy LaPerriere, who joined us yesterday, saying that they are trying to cram $4 trillion into a $2 trillion package with more gimmicks. Pretty much basically saying that some of these programs, huge programs, by the way, will sunset after only a short period of time. And we know they're not going to sunset. Dagan McDowell will jump in here because once you have a major federal program in place like a child tax credit, it's hard to take it away.
Mark, doesn't this administration understand that they're trying to push trillions of dollars in additional spending, vast new century entitlements, as I call them, at a time, one, when inflation is surging? You don't spend more money and try to con the American people into thinking that it's good for inflation to spend all that. They know better, number one. And number two, Social Security and Medicare are going bankrupt. The Medicare Hospital Trust Fund runs out of money in 5 years. Benefits get cut immediately by 9%. And don't the people in the White House understand that you cannot sell trillions of dollars in new spending at a time when inflation is crushing hardworking Americans?
Well, obviously, if the White House understood the political dynamics of what they were doing, they would have changed course a long time ago. I mean, they should have passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill. It had 70 to 80% support in the polls. People want physical infrastructure, and then taken this up separately or listened to Manchin and waited a bit to see if inflation subsides before trying to do this enormous, trillions of dollars of additional tax and spend. Now, the White House strategy obviously so far has not been successful. When you looked at the president's numbers, it plunged from having almost 60% approval now to, in this poll, 46, and many other polls even below 40.
All right, we will leave it there, Mark. And you make a really great point on all of that. We so appreciate it. Mark, do you think this plummeting situation impacts the midterm elections in 2022? Before we go, real quick.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if the president is not, having successful ratings on key issues like the economy and things fundamental like gasoline prices and food prices, that's going to have an enormous effect. Look, right now, unless the administration changes course here or in a lot of the things it's doing, it's headed for a pretty gruesome midterms, and I think they know it.
All right, Mark, thanks very much.